French President Emmanuel Macron's bill against separatism heads to a vote in the National Assembly today, Tuesday. That vote is scheduled to begin late in the afternoon. The bill is aimed at clamping down on radical Islam and strengthening French secularism. It was spearheaded by Emmanuel Macron back in October after a French teacher was beheaded for showing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, International Affairs editor Philip Turle is here in studio to discuss a little bit more. Philip, what's in the bill? Give us some details on the meat on the bones of the bill.
Right, well, this is called the Reinforcing Republican Principles Bill, James, and what Emmanuel Macron is trying to do here is to defend what he says is free thinking and free speech in France, which is, according to the French president, now under threat, especially since the enormous activity by jihadist and terrorist groups in France since 2015. So these are the main points in the bill. Tougher penalties for crimes in the name of religion, more powers to fight hate speech online. That is in particular in reference to the beheading of Samuel Paty, the school teacher, last October, who was victim of a hate campaign through social media. There are also limits on foreign donations to religious institutions to the order of €10,000, more power to fight forced marriages, polygamy and virginity tests, which are, of course, banned in France, and an end to clandestine schools. That is one of the key measures to stop parents from educating their children at home, which the government perceives in certain cases as being the indoctrination of children into radical Islam. Children will only be allowed to be taught at home, for example, if they are handicapped or they can no longer go to school. But there will be some kind of leeway there up until 2024. This has been a very, very a tense debate in the National Assembly because there are, of course, those who are in favour and those who are against. There have been loads of amendments which have been put forward to try to correct this bill. 313 have been adopted, and there have been 135 hours of debate. So it's not a bill that's gone through very easily, but it looks like it is going to be voted into law. The bottom line here is that French Muslims are perceiving this as being anti-Muslim, even though Islam is not mentioned in this bill. They say it is anti-Muslim, and that is why they're against it.
Right, and so it has split French politicians around the Assembly. It has split. It has caused a lot of division. People do see this as excessive, unnecessary, over-legislating, if you like. Others say absolutely not. We're in a crisis.
Well, many of them are saying, James, that the laws already exist against all of these measures. You know, you don't need to bring in new laws. There's already a law against polygamy in France and testing to see whether a girl is a virgin or not, and hate speech. All of those are banned. Right. So why bring in more legislation where we're going to stigmatise Muslims even more than in many cases they're being stigmatised already? That is one of the big debates that's been taking place in the National Assembly. Now, for example, the right wing in France has said this bill doesn't go far enough. It doesn't actually single out radical Islam and name it as such. It doesn't even mention any religions at all. So it's not going far enough, whereas the left says it's an attack on civil liberties in France, and therefore is something that needs to be brought down. And then you have the discussion between those who are in charge of Muslim organisations in France. Many of them say, well, look, this is a problem staring us in the face, we need to deal with it. And others are saying, well, no, we don't need to deal with that because Muslims are already subject to a lot of harassment in France. They already are the victims of hate campaigns in France. This is only going to increase that as a result of this new legislation. And what is important to remember, James, is that in France there is a law, the 1905 law, secularism law, which separates church and state, which means that the church can be independent, people can have their own faith, they can do what they like with it, but the state will not intervene in that. And this law is being seen as the state taking a much more important role and even going after religion in some cases, saying you're not towing the line, you have to do more, and that is not the state's role. So the big fallout of this has been on the international scene, where comments by Emmanuel Macron, for example, that Islam is in crisis, have not been accepted by some of the world leaders, notably the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who last October called for a boycott of French products in the Middle East. That boycott was taken up in several countries, including Kuwait and Jordan and Qatar, and the French government says, well, it's only fairly marginal, but the impact was made. And there's one other aspect which is quite interesting to take on board here about this law, and that is that government thinks that Emmanuel Macron is trying to play into the hands of the right wing to pull votes away from Marine Le Pen before next year's election.
Okay, it's once you start unravelling it, Philip, there's a lot at the centre of that particular piece of legislation in terms of issues in French society. Thank you for that.